creating a video game of a business, or creating a video game of a person, and trying to understand what is the impact of different options that they have.
Thank you so much for this wonderful answer, sir. So you work closely with Dr. Ely, the father of theory. What was the one moment that completely changed how you see the world?
So I was, when I was, long before I met my mentor, Dr. Eliyahu Goldratt, who was the creator of Theory of Constraints, I was at school. I was always a big kid, so I did well at sport, but I didn't do well in academics. I was really struggling. I was a kid that was sitting at the back of the class thinking, everybody else seems to be getting it, but I don't get it. And the more complex the topic, especially biology and chemistry, geography, these were the things I really struggled. I didn't have good memory, so I struggled to remember names. And I realized that I was going to have to work a lot harder than anybody else in order to get at least reasonable grades. But then I made this remarkable discovery, is when I did put in the effort, when I got it, I really got it. And I started writing down notes to say, I've taken this complex subject called chemistry or physics or geometry, and this is what I've learned from it, put in the most simple terms possible, something that I would understand. And it turns out that other kids also benefited from that. So suddenly I was this nerdy kid that used to be bullied, their lunches stolen, to the kids coming to me and asking for my notes because it helped them to prepare for the exam. So not only I was getting better marks, but also the other kids in the class that were struggling with me. And that ability to be able to look for and find what I call the inherent simplicity, the simple understanding that can explain a lot, that became one of my strengths. So something that I thought was a weakness, which is the time it took me to understand something, became a big strength. And that changed everything. It gave me a lot of confidence. And I still use that today. I work in many different industries. And even though I've been doing this for a long time, you walk into a new industry and you get overwhelmed. They use language that you don't understand. So I'm just very patient with myself. I say it's going to take some time to figure this out, but I've done it before and I'm confident that I can do it again.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and thank you so much for this wonderful answer. So what was the worst decision you ever made, and what did it teach you?
It's a very personal question. But when we study decisions and when you speak to top people, like I've had the opportunity to meet the most incredible people in the world, people like Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger and Mr. Nelson Mandela, absolutely legends in their field, Tony Robbins. And it's very interesting when you ask them, what is the most important decision that you can make in your whole life? What do you think it is? Of all the decisions that you make, we make like 35,000 decisions every day, right? Most of it don't really matter because it's like what to eat, what to reply, how to get to school, how to get to work. But what do you think is the most important decision, the ones that's the most consequential? So if you get it right, your life will be very good. If you get it wrong, it will be a nightmare. What do you think that is?
It's difficult to tell. I don't have in mind.
That's a good option, right? It's your decisions around health are definitely very consequential. Um, it turns out that when you meet these very successful people, they will tell you that the most important decision that you'll ever make is your romantic partner. And the second most important decision is your business partner. And because those are the people that you will spend up most of your life with, and they will also impact you, So in my personal case, that is probably the worst decision I've made, is when you study, falling in love, what you realize is that we don't think clearly, when we fall in love, we might be going after the wrong thing. And even though you know that maybe this is not the right partner for you, I grew up, like I said to you, a very nerdy kid. I never had a girlfriend. So the first girl that paid attention to me, I fell madly in love with her, absolutely madly in love with her. And, we ended up being married for a long time, but it was already clear right at the beginning that we weren't a good fit, that we wanted very different things. So that was something that I've learned a lot from, and is to be really honest with yourself when you're selecting a partner. Is why are you selecting them? And the first two things that you should pay attention to is, do they make you feel special and safe? That's at the heart of it, Trust your intuition. Do they make you feel special and safe? And then you can see, do they have a similar goal to you? Or is their goal very different? Do they have similar values to you? Or are their values very different? So that to me was the biggest lessons I've learned, is that we should, because it's such an important decision, you want to make sure that you get it right. And you're going to mess it up along a few times, because love is a very powerful emotion. When you fall in love, essentially what our mind does, it will amplify all the green flags and it will dampen all the red flags. And then afterwards we think, oh my goodness, what was I thinking?
Thank you so much, sir, for explaining this. So wonderful. Thank you so much for this wonderful answer. So, in simple word, what is a constraint, and why do you say it's actually a gift and not a problem?
That's a great question. So if you think about, if you have a goal for yourself, right, you might want to live happily and healthy to 100 years old, right? Or you might have a business and your goal is to make $100,000 for your business. So that's always step one, is what is the goal? The constraint is anything that you need to achieve that goal and you don't have enough of it. So for business, it might be that I don't have enough demand for the product or service that I'm supplying. Or I have enough demand, there's a queue of people waiting, but I don't have enough capacity to supply it. Or I might not have enough supply. There's some raw materials or skills or other resource that I need that I don't have enough of. Or I might not have enough cash. When it comes to our health, if I want to get to 100 years old, and you think about what's the constraint, what don't I have enough of? And it turns out to be energy. That's the ultimate constraint. And we have these little powerhouses in our bodies called mitochondria, and they produce all the energy that we need. And we need energy for our vital systems like our heart and lungs and immune system, but we also need energy for cellular repair and replacement, and for vitality and cognition when we're thinking things through. So once you have a constraint and you say, I don't have enough of it, there's basically three things that you're going to do. Most of the time, what we think is just get more, right? I don't have enough salespeople, let me hire more salespeople. But we miss out on two opportunities. One is to make sure you don't waste it. So if time is your constraint, the first thing you should do is to look at all the things that waste your time and attention and stop doing that thing, right? That will release a lot of time and attention of that scarce resource back. And then you can say, well, am I optimally allocated? So the time and attention that I do have, am I investing it in the things that can really make the difference? So that's a second way to be able to get more of the goal. I'm getting more of the constraint first by making sure I'm not wasting it. Secondly, by making sure I'm optimally allocating it for things that really matter. And then if it's still not enough, only then do I go and get more. And that's why it's a gift of all the things in the system that I can improve, of all the things in a business that I can improve, of all the things in my life that I can improve. It's like the weakest link. If you want to strengthen the chain, it doesn't matter if there's 3 links or 30,000 links. There's always just one weakest link. And your focus should be to find that weakest link and make it stronger, because then the whole system becomes stronger and you get more of the goal. That's why it's a gift and not a problem.
Thank you so much for explaining this so wonderful, sir. So, in an age of AI, what is one skill you believe humans must never outsource to a machine?
That's a very hard one. It's a very important question, but it's a very hard one. I did a post today about this, and when I was 16 years old, I built my first neural network, so the first versions of AI. And I got super excited because I realized that this AI can do so much more, so much faster, so much better than us. But I also got very concerned because of the same reason. And the one thing that AI doesn't have, that we have, that can become a constraint is our emotions. Right? When we have emotions, we overreact sometimes. We get angry and frustrated and depressed, and it can cause us to overreact or underreact. AI doesn't have emotions, right? So if it's trying to learn how to play a computer game, right, it's just trying things. It doesn't care. It doesn't feel shame when it's trying things and it didn't work and it was a silly idea. It's just focusing on learning. So I'm suspecting that over time we will outsource more and more of our decisions to AI because it's just simply better and faster and much cheaper than us having to do it ourselves. But we have to retain agency for our life, right? So the one thing that you won't or shouldn't outsource to a machine is, what is your goal? What do you really want in this life that will make it worthwhile living? And once you have that clear in your mind, like for me, it was very clear from very young. I wanted to help people make better, faster decisions when it really matters. That's my life goal. And I want to use people and I want to use AI and robotics to try and help me achieve that goal. So that's the one thing you should never outsource, not just to a machine, but also not to anybody else. Don't let your parents tell you what you should have as a goal in life. That's your decision.
Exactly, and it's such a great answer. Thank you so much for explaining. So, will experts still have value 10 years from now, or will AI replace them?
It's a very good question. And the hard reality is that probably most experts will not have jobs. They will be replaced by AI. So we're always going to need a human in the loop, right? So the people that will become valuable are the ones that will learn how to use AI properly and learn to give feedback to the AI. So that's how I'm working at the moment. I am being much, much more productive than ever before. I'll give you a small example just of that, right? I have software called Harmony Decide, right? It's a decision maker app. If you go to the App Store now and you enter Harmony Decision Maker, you'll find the app there. You can download it. It will guide you through a process to help you make a better, faster decision. And we've embedded AI into that. So when you get stuck or you want the AI to do the analysis and you just check it, you can do that. It took me 7 years and almost $1 million to develop that software, because you need a web application, you need an iOS application for iPhones and iPads, you need Android, right? It took a long time to develop it. And I've gone through many cycles with developers, right? My team first was in Belarus, and then it was in Pakistan, and then in India. And the problem was that, when developers get offered more money, they leave, and then you have to bring in a new person. And when you bring in a new person, they have to learn the code. And initially, they first don't understand it, so they cause bugs. So now you have to pay them to train on your software. You have to pay them to cause bugs, and you have to pay them to fix the bugs. And they haven't added any value. And I was getting into this vicious cycle where we were not creating enough new features for users. One weekend, I got so frustrated that I started working with Replit. It's an agentry AI. And within 2 days, I rebuilt the software from scratch. That took 7 years, right? And a team of about 6, 7 top developers to do that. So that's going to be the problem for experts, is you're going to have to fight to show that you can bring value. And almost like the advice I gave earlier, the experts will become valuable when they start thinking about, what do we really want and need? What do our customers want and need from us? And they know how to use AI to get that, right? And they become the human in the loop where they can provide feedback.
He explains such a very well. It's too amazing, sir. So your recent post asked AI made your developer 10x faster. So why did not profit go up 10x? What surprising answer?
Yeah, it's a very good question, right? So if you think about it, if AI could make your developers 10 times faster, 10 times more productive, then why shouldn't profits go up by 10x or more? And the answer is very simple. If your developers was not your bottleneck, or the bottleneck quickly moved somewhere else, maybe by doubling them, the bottleneck moved upstream or downstream, then you can't expect a 10x. So you have to constantly make sure that you are using AI to solve your bottleneck.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer. So what's the number one mental trap that smart people fall into when making big decisions?
Also, very, very good one. When you've had some success, it's difficult to resist the temptation to become overconfident. And it's the overconfidence that becomes your biggest trap. So I call the solution to that humble confidence, is to realize that you don't know everything, to realize that you can be frequently wrong, but at the same time to have confidence that you do know something, and at least you know enough to come up with a hypothesis of what's my options and what can I try. So I think that's the biggest trap that smart people fall in, is becoming overconfident.
Okay, okay. So you advise CEOs, government, and entrepreneurs. What question do you ask them that they never been asked before?
I think this idea about separating between what is a problem and what is a constraint, right? So if I wanted to help you and I say, what's the problem? And you say, I'm overweight, right? Or I'm losing money, versus to say, what's your goal? And now tell me, what don't you have enough of? Because the goal is to have enough of everything. And that helps you to focus on the one thing and not the many things. If you ask people what's your problem, they have many problems. So you have to remind them, what is the one thing? What's the one goal, the one constraint, the one problem?
Thank you so much for explaining too good, sir. Okay, so how do you make a decision when you have too little information versus too much information?
Yes, so that was something that fascinated me, right? You're never going to have all the data and information, and you'll never be able to predict accurately what will happen. And sometimes, like you say, yeah, you might have too much information, right? So think about selecting a romantic partner, right? Who to take on for a date next, or maybe one day who to get move in together or get married, right? As you will never know everything about them. Even today with social media, you can learn a lot more about them, and you can never really predict how they will behave under certain conditions. What if you mess up? How are they going to deal with that? So I was very curious about that, and I realized very early on that I think that evolution developed emotions as a hack to help us make decisions. So imagine I say you have to pick a partner. How many things could you consider? Well, you could consider a whole long list of criteria, right? Or what if you could only consider one thing? It would make it so much simpler. And that one thing is how does she or he make you feel? Do they make you feel special and safe? Right? And safe is not just about physical safety. It's like, do I feel I can be exactly who I am with all my imperfections and she'll be okay with it? So when you have too little information or you have too much information, you have to trust your instinct, your gut, but you also have to know that sometimes your gut can be wrong. So trust, but validate, right? So trust your gut, but have a way of checking.
Okay,
Like, for
thank you so much.
example, if you are meeting somebody, you're falling madly in love, she's beautiful, and you go out to a restaurant together and you see her being disrespectful to a server, to a waiter, right? That's like, I trust that she's a good person, but I'm validating. Good people treat others with kindness and respect. And when they don't, one of the most important lessons I've learned from a mentor of mine is the way that somebody does one thing is how they do everything. So if they have an excuse to treat somebody with disrespect or not with kindness, that's probably who they really are. So trust your gut, but validate it.
Right, and thank you so much for explaining. So my last question is, sir, if you could send one message to every leader on earth in 2026, what one sentence only, what would it be?
That's a beautiful question to end off with. I think the most important reminder that we can all give ourselves is that we are all part of one. We are all connected. You know, is that when you hurt somebody else, you are hurting yourself. And even to the extent when you're hurting other animals and the planet, you're ultimately hurting yourself. There's a beautiful lesson that I learned from somebody that I've met, Dr. Brian Cox. He's one of the top physicists in the world. And he was asked a similar question. He was speaking to leaders of the world, and he said, in 1 minute, what message would you leave them? And he said, the universe is 13.5 billion years old. As far as we know, life on the planet Earth started about 4 billion years ago. It took about 4 billion for this level of complexity of life to form in the form of human beings. And human beings are conscious beings, right? And as far as we know, we might be the only complex conscious beings in our solar system that has 400 billion stars, 400 billion suns, right? And we might be the only consciousness, right? We're not sure, but it could be, because we've been trying to find evidence for others but we haven't been able. So keep that in mind. Don't mess this up. We have a responsibility to ourselves and to each other. So connection to me is the cure to all. It's like love and connection is a cure to everything. People get addicted because they disconnected. When they get disconnected, they get depressed and addicted. So the cure to everything is reconnection. Reconnect with yourself, with your goals, with your values. Reconnect with the people that are closest to you, but also reconnect with humanity and everything that's alive.
That's really great, and thank you so much for this wonderful answer. And sir, thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom today. This has a truly been honor, and to be honest, I learned a lot of things from you, and I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for your time, and thank you so much for explaining too good. Thank you so much, sir.
You're very welcome, and I want to recommend to everybody, I shared with you the book that I've written for young people. It's called My Impossible Decision. And we work with schools. So if the school think that it's important for their children to learn how to make important, impossible decisions in life, we're very happy to work with the schools. We'll donate all the materials to them, train their tutors and teachers how to teach the method. That's part of my legacy, is teaching people how to think, how to make decisions, not what to think or what to decide.
Thank you so much, sir. Sure, and thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.